we're pretty excited about is a voice bot, so automatically answering or making voice calls through with the help of instead of text-based chatbots, more voice bots. It's a marketing agency, so the Copilot helps them analyze campaigns, analyze creatives, and brainstorm on how campaigns could be improved. So, common use case from a marketing point of view, especially, was, let's say, as soon as you detect that somebody is near an airport or somebody is driving towards the border town, right? Then send an offer for roaming. It's sort of a learning, right? So, in the first venture, Unscramble, at least one of my focus was on tackling interesting problems, right? So I left IBM to work on what I thought was interesting problems, which is not always optimal. In the product company, you're saying, this is what I have. Let's see how best to make it work for you. In the services company, you say, what's your problem? And then try to cobble together the right solution for it. Like I said, my one of the project 1/0 is an automatic social media response. So where one of the steps in that agentic workflow is making a decision. Does the AI have enough confidence in how to reply to this particular tweet or post or message, versus when should I get a human in the loop? So that decision point is going to be critical on deciding when you can take action automatically versus when it's going to need to ask a human for approval.
Hi, friends, and welcome to this exciting and power packed episode of Leading with Data, where I talk to industry experts and bring out their perspective and their insights for all of you. Today, I'm thrilled to have Anand Ranganathan, who is a serial entrepreneur in the world of AI and machine learning. Anand is currently the Chief AI Officer and co founder at OneByZero, where he is redefining how businesses harness the power of AI and GenAI to make real time systems. Prior to this, he was a research scientist at IBM for more than a decade, and he scaled and exited his previous venture just in time before GenAI arrived at scenes. We'll dive into his fascinating journey, the future of conversational AI, and his take on how organizations can embrace Gen AI and build products to thrive on what's happening around us. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's get started.
Hi, Anand, and welcome to the show. Uh, Anand, let's start the discussion with how you got into AI and ML, and what has been your journey, and what do those early days look for you?
Sure, yeah. No, thanks for having me, Kunal. It's a pleasure. I've been following Analytics Vidhya for a long, long time, and even I think we gave a talk like a few months back. But no,
Hmm.
thanks for having me. So yeah, on my journey in AI, it started, let's say, with my PhD. So I done my
Mhm.
bachelor's at IIT Madras and then did my PhD at University of Illinois at
Yeah.
Champaign. So my
Mhm.
PhD topic was at the intersection of AI and distributed systems. The
Interesting.
kind of
Mhm.
AI I was doing back then is very different from what it looks like now. I was doing a lot of work more in symbolic or logical AI, where the goal is, given you have a set of facts and you want to be able to infer or reason about the world in some way. So
Yeah.
I did some machine learning, but not as much. So a big part of my work was in an area called AI planning.
Interesting.
So
Mhm.
AI planning is an area where you have the world in one state and you have a set of actions you can perform, and
Mhm.
each action changes the world in some form. And it has some preconditions, it has some post conditions, and your goal is to find the shortest or the quickest or some optimal path to take the world
Interesting.
from its current state to a new goal state. So
Interesting.
it's pretty hard,
Mhm.
especially 90s, 2000s. It's the world of planning has changed a little bit over the last few years because LLMs have their
Mhm.
own way of doing planning. But I
Yeah.
was doing more, you could say, classical AI planning, and the
Right.
applications
Mhm.
I was doing back then was in configuring or automatically repairing systems through a planning approach, so that you could
Mhm.
diagnose some problems and then try different actions and observe the world and do some reinforcement learning to understand what actions work better, and and finally decided the best path to get to a certain
Hmm.
state. So
Interesting.
that so that was the space of AI I was doing. Yeah, this is
Wow.
the early mid 2000s.
Hmm.
Uh, After my PhD, I joined IBM Research, and there I worked on a lot of big data problems. So I was involved in building out IBM's own stream processing offering. It was called
Hmm.
InfoSphere Streams. It was like a precursor to Kafka, I would say, in some ways.
Hmm.
Uh, but my role in that product was also how to infuse certain aspects of AI within the platform. So again, we used a bunch of classical, I would say, planning and reasoning approaches to
Hmm.
figure out how best to create applications, or almost you could say generate code, not a machine learning approach, but more a reasoning based approach to solve certain problems. So
Hmm.
yeah, so at that time, popular technologies like the semantic web, that rings a bell, RDF and OWL, and other ways of representing knowledge.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's still very classical AI, I would say. In fact, the time was at IBM was at the time when IBM came out with its man versus machine Jeopardy challenge.
Correct.
So I had a chance to work with that team for a bit for a few different other domains. But yeah, even that, I would say that system was more logical. There was some machine learning, but the primary focus or thrust was more logical or symbolic AI.
Hmm.
And of course, since the 2010s, things changed. So
Right.
once deep learning, sort of took off, and some of the earliest image and like everything from AlexNet, ImageNet on the image side,
Correct.
and then on the text side, there was like Word2Vec and a few others that came in the 2010s. I think from then the deep learning just took off, right? And and yeah, so it's been quite a ride, especially last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I still think there's needs to be an interesting balance, a good balance between more symbolic AI or and statistical machine learning based AI.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think yeah, we'll get there. Even now, there are some interesting techniques I'm seeing in both literature as well as in certain companies where people try to merge knowledge graphs with LLMs to do better understanding and reasoning. So
Hmm.
yeah, so but yeah, that's sort of my path, at least till my time at IBM.
Hmm.
I left IBM, mid 2010s, and co-founded my first startup, which is called Unscramble. So there we were focused on creating easier interfaces for our natural language powered interfaces, especially for users to do certain kinds of actions. So
Hmm.
one of our products was around natural language queries, so allowing people to ask questions on databases using plain English. And behind the scenes,
Interesting.
initially, we'd build our own NL to SQL algorithms for translating natural language to SQL in the context of a given database, in the context of a given organization.
Very
So
interesting. Hmm.
that's one product. Another product was a more pseudo natural language based interface for marketing users to be able to define campaigns more easily.
Hmm.
So we built a real-time streaming platform for doing real-time campaigns. And well, one of the challenges that we often saw was that it took a long time for people to be able to configure a campaign. So an
Yeah.
example of a campaign is something like, when this kind of a customer does this kind of an action, send them this kind of an offer on this kind of channel or device, right?
Correct.
And that kind of thing often, when some of the customers we worked with, it would take weeks for somebody to develop that logic and code it in an appropriate, streaming platform or big data platform to action on it.
Yeah.
So instead, we came up with a more pseudo natural language based approach where people could, write the campaign definitions, and then those definitions got compiled into a stream processing platform.
Interesting.
So yeah, so that and the NL to SQL, those are things we've worked on for a long time. The NL to
Mhm.
SQL is still something we work on, although the techniques now with over the last 2 3 years are very different from what we were building
Good.
when we started
Yeah.
off working this product. these days, of course, LLMs do a pretty good job in going pretty far in translating natural language to SQL, and also interpreting the results and explaining graphs or tables in a nice fashion.
Correct.
Um, but yeah, but there's also challenges in that space, which we can get to at
Mhm.
some point in a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Unscramble, eventually, we the assets and part of the team was sold, and over the last couple of years, we pivoted and we're doing more consulting services work as part of a new company called OneByZero.
Mhm.
So at OneByZero, we do a variety of data, AI, ML projects, especially GenAI projects. The last year and a half, everything on the GenAI side is everything from marketing co-pilots. So one of our customers, we built a co-pilot that helps. This is a marketing agency. So the co-pilot helps them analyze campaigns, analyze creatives, and brainstorm on how campaigns could be improved. Another one is on automatic social responders or social media responders. So as soon as, say, when somebody, say, tweets or posts a message on some company's Facebook page or X handle, then we have a system that can automatically respond to it. Another one we're pretty excited about is on a voice bot, so
Mhm.
automatically answering or making voice calls through uh, with the help of, instead of text-based chatbots, more voice bots. So lots of interesting projects, both in generative AI as well as in more classical machine learning. So things from recommendation systems to price optimization and forecasting and so on. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a very interesting space.
Wow, really interesting. I have quite a few questions, I think,
Oh, yeah.
on that. So, first of all, you spent, I think, about a decade at IBM, and then
Yes.
you started on Scramble. So, what was the, you know, driving force there, and why kind of leave IBM to start something of your own?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I spent a decade at IBM. It was great time there. Got I worked a little bit in the first few years in more pure research, and the last few years in more go to market side of big data products. So
Hmm.
I was leading a small team that helped in both pre-sales as well as delivery of interesting big data projects. So the reason I left IBM was to give a shot at trying my own thoughts and my own approaches to some
Hmm.
problems or challenges that I thought uh, I could spot in the industry.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was also a good fortuitous time in terms of, I'd met some other colleagues uh, or ex-colleagues of mine at IBM who all wanted to venture out and try
Interesting.
our hand at the same at 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 some interesting problems, but
Hmm.
hopefully trying to be a bit more nimble while solving it, right? So yeah, so it's a combination of meeting the right people at the right time, identifying potential interesting problems we could work on, and seeing that there was some market for it. So yeah, that
Interesting.
all
Yeah.
those reasons have helped me make the jump.
Wow. And then, the two problems which you mentioned, right? So NL2 SQL, and then the second one where you mentioned that real time or almost near time campaign building for they almost seem like two very different problems for a company to take on, right? So how did that
Yeah.
happen? And or maybe is there a underlying single stream which is
Yeah.
connecting the two?
So at a very high level, there is commonality. So one is queries on structured data, right? So
Hmm.
NL to SQL, and then
Yeah.
understanding the data coming back is query structured data. The other one is triggers or events on streaming data. At a
Hmm.
high level, like we're defining campaigns, and those campaigns
Yeah.
become essentially rules, or you could say, you could even call them streaming SQL, or the variant to streaming SQL, but
Mhm.
on streaming data to detect events of interest and decide what actions to take. So they were different in the domains, but there's underlying commonality in the problem domain. One was more big data or static data focused, other was streaming data focused. Um, but yeah, so we started off with actually the streaming data problem
Mhm.
first, and then we moved to also tackle the other one, because while we were implementing the solutions for streaming data, we found people were struggling with more static data. So in a sense, at that time, we thought the streaming data was maybe a little bit ahead of its time itself. So people were, we just, each time we go to a new company, we say even now, I think people have troubles with their data
Yeah.
landscape and getting insights from it. So we felt there was an opportunity to also make a mark in the static data space. Or the streaming was the first thing we started working on.
Got it. Interesting. And then how big did your first venture grow, and then what was the team like? What can you share a bit more details about the journey there?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the first, so Unscramble, at its peak was about 65 to 70 people.
Hmm.
We had two main markets, customers in the US as well, and Canada,
Hmm.
as well as in Asia. So we had customers in the Middle East and South Asia and Southeast Asia.
Interesting. Hmm.
So the main verticals we focused on were telecommunications, and that's many of our customers were in telecommunications,
Interesting.
uh, and uh, uh, but we also had customers in retail and financial services and others. So
Yeah.
telecommunications was sort of a domain that I had spent some time even while I was at IBM. Worked with several
Hmm.
telcos, so they all have a big streaming data problem.
Yeah.
So each time somebody makes a call or somebody does some data activities, something called a CDR is produced, call data
Hmm.
record, or
Correct.
sometimes called XDR these days,
Hmm.
because it's not just call, could also be data or SMS. So companies would have billions or tens of billions of such records flowing every day, and some of the bigger telcos, like and at that time, at IBM, we worked with Airtel and even beyond, and some of the Indian telcos have hundreds of billions,
Yeah.
trillions of records per day. Um, so so and the challenge was, how do you uh, take actions, or perform some, or do some analytics on the streaming data in real time. So the so common use case, from a marketing point of view especially, was, let's say, as soon as you detect that somebody is near an airport, or somebody is driving towards a border town, right, then send an offer for roaming. That's an
Right.
example of a campaign, a real-time marketing
Yeah.
campaign in the telecommunications space. And so those are the kinds of campaigns that our system was able to affect, or to automate. Uh,
Hmm.
but while we was building those out, we also saw many telcos were struggling with, okay, how do I even report on the performance of campaigns, or how do I even know how many people have been driving to border towns in the last month? So
Right.
then it translated into a static data problem. Like, how do I query big data systems or even small data systems to understand the potential impact of these kind of campaigns? So that was sort of the evolution. That while we started off with a real-time marketing solution, we realized that there was a need for just analytics on historical data as well.
Yeah, interesting. And during this period, obviously, in the background, deep learning became popular, and then very deep models came in. So how did that translate into your outlook at that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, especially for the NL to SQL problem,
Yeah.
when we started off working on this problem, there weren't. I mean, the problem has been working for a long time, but deep learning was just starting
Correct.
to get to start being used for that.
Mature. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the challenges that we found in the NL to SQL space was both just translation, but also giving good context or giving good understanding of the organization's data landscape and the terms they use. So in a telco, for instance, and I'm sure this is the same across different industries. Oftentimes, in their say big data lakes or in the data warehouses, they would have thousands of tables or tens of thousands of tables. Many of them would look or sound very similar. So they would have tables like, okay, customer activity on a daily underscore daily, customer activity underscore weekly, customer activity underscore monthly, and then things like that, or customer purchases underscore daily, customer purchases underscore weekly, customer purchases underscore daily underscore 2024, and that. So there'll be a whole slew of tables that could be used for, so let's say you had a question like how many customers went roamed in the last 2 years. There are lots of different tables that could be used for that. So apart from just the translation problem, a bigger problem was just was having good data governance and understanding what tables were there, which tables to use for which kinds of queries, and what are the assumptions in those tables. Right. So if a table is called underscore 2024, implicitly maybe it has data only for 2024, but you need to be able to state that in some way.
Yeah.
So there were two. So we focus a lot on the data definition problem. So we came up with a semantic model of the data and the databases where you could define lots of information about each table, each column. What does it mean? What is the unit of a column? Like sometimes like some of telcos you work with, they might express say transaction amounts in cents or paise, and some others might say in rupees or dollars, right? So even just understanding what the unit is. So we had come up with a very rich semantic model for understanding the content and semantics in a database and data warehouse, and that became part of the input to the learning approaches we use for translation. So yeah, so it was so initially we built our own approaches. We used uh, we started off with some of the more older word embedding models, like there were glove and fast text and word to vec and so on, and then we started using once BERT came out, we started using BERT and some others. But yeah, a lot of time we used these models as part as well as the semantic information about the databases to inform the natural language to SQL model. So we had a whole pipeline of different steps that would that any user query would flow through, right? Understanding, getting a sense of what kind of query is it, which kind of tables might it hit, what kind of relevant semantic context do we need to pull in, do we need to translate something before or simplify or reword the query in some ways, and then the actual model itself. And then lots of other challenges, right? So for instance, a big challenge that we faced is, let's say you had a a table of say customers or employees or something, and somebody asks a question like, what is the let's give an example. What's the revenue from this is a sales table, right? What's the revenue from the sales agent named uh, let's say Mike Smith, right? And in the actual database, there's nobody called Mike Smith, but this is a Michael Smith. So even just understanding that Mike Smith needs to be reworded to Michael Smith, because most likely that's what they meant. So there's a whole pipeline of different steps that would clean up everything and then make it ready for the actual translation, and then translation. So the last bit of the translation was something where initially we built our own models, but you know right now I think the state of the art would just be to use an LLM or fine-tuned LLM for that. But all the previous steps in cleaning up the query and giving understanding of deciding should I translate Mike Smith to Michael Smith before considering the SQL, all that is things we spend a lot of time on as well.
Interesting. And what was your aha moment with generative AI? So, when did you see what this was capable of during this
Oh,
period?
uh, I think it was only after ChatGPT came out and
Came out?
like early, I
Mhm.
would say early 2020, 2023,
Three.
late 2022, early 2023, when some of the earlier, right now I say earlier, but some of the first fine-tuned SQL generation models came out, and then we
Mhm.
realized that you know, at least for the last translation step, once you have clean natural language and to SQL, then they did a very good job out of the box almost.
Mhm.
Right? So at that time there were models like SQL Coder,
Correct.
Code Llama,
Yeah.
early 2023 or so. Yes, yeah. So that's when we realized that the space has changed. So what was
Disrupted.
even a year
Yeah.
back there was kind of a tricky problem has become
Mhm.
simpler.
Simpler, correct. And how was your reaction to it? Because you have a product and it's getting disrupted. So did you kind of rethink about the product from scratch, or I mean, how did you kind of deal with that?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. No. So I guess yeah. So our journey was so yeah. So you could say that we had. Um, so in 2022 itself, we were looking for an exit. There were a few buyers that were
okay.
interested in the product. So
Hmm.
so we didn't re-architect the product. We had some ideas
Okay.
on what to, but then we sold
Okay.
the
So the
assets of our
timing
team.
worked out. Mhm.
So timing kind of worked out, yeah.
Yeah.
And to a degree, we also saw the space is about to get disrupted a lot. So
Right.
uh, yeah, so it's a yeah. So instead, so then we pivoted to this more services company where we started, building out solutions, using existing
Right.
models. There is a time when even now, it's very difficult to know what to build these days,
Yeah.
because it's it's easy to build stuff, but then also easy
Right.
to get disrupted.
Get disrupted. Exactly. That actually brings me to the question which I wanted to do, which is you built and then eventually sold off a product-based company, and then you moved to doing a services-based company, and fundamentally from a how that companies are typically structured, they are almost very fundamentally different organizations, right?
Yep.
So how did you as a leader adopt to it, and then what were the changes you had to kind
Mhm.
of make in the way you built one by zero versus, let's say, unscramble?
No, it's a very good. Your point. Yes. So Unscramble, we did the product route. We raised funding. We raised a Series A. We were looking at Series B as well before we decided to make the sale.
Hmm.
At Unscramble, sorry, 1 by 0, it's been more bootstrapped. No, it's often difficult to raise money. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
changing now because we've talked
Hmm.
to a few different VCs that are very open to investing in AI services companies because they know that
Hmm.
it's a bit different from normal services companies. There's lots of more
Yeah.
exploration. So the VC mindset has changed slightly, I think, on that front.
Hmm.
But in general, it's more difficult to raise money from a for services company. But you get revenues quicker as
Yeah.
build projects, deliver. You get revenues and so yeah. So it's a different trajectory. The team composition is slightly different. There's less uh, there's less emphasis on product management and features. We still do have internal assets that we maintain and they develop, but it's more heavily in response to customer requirements and what we think a certain customer might need down the line. Yeah, there's a lot more emphasis in services company on the account management and project management side,
Right. Hmm.
and keeping track of say billing and maintaining timesheets and
Yeah.
submitting them, and also keeping track and also working with partners, but in a different way. So at 1 by 0, we're close partners with AWS, with Databricks, and a few other large vendors, and they often introduce us to customers, and we take on projects where we implement these solutions. So yeah, so it's big. There's a big focus also on certifications, which we didn't have necessarily to do as a product company, but
Right.
we need to get people certified and trained on AWS, Databricks, Snowflake, or other technologies, right? So yeah, and then yeah, it's a definitely different ball game in terms of keeping
Yeah.
track of projects and making sure that that the customers are getting what they need at the right times, uh, and also at the same time, um, uh, guiding them in the way they need to think of the problem. Right? So it's a close relationship with customers in a certain way. In the product company, you're saying, this is what I have, let's see how
Yeah.
best to make it work for you. In the services company, you say, what's your problem,
Correct.
and then try to cobble together the right solution for it.
Yeah. And how big is the team today? And how's been the journey of
Yeah.
I think now close to 2 years.
Yeah. It's about 70-ish people at this time.
Hmm.
There's a very strong focus for 1 by 0 in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
The CEO is based in Singapore, and then
Interesting.
I help out, or I sometimes keep some crazy hours. But
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, so we have customers in Philippines, in Thailand, there are lots of countries in Southeast Asia, and then we also have a team in India as well as in Philippines.
Hmm.
So there's great talent we all know about talent in India, but even
Yeah.
Philippines has some very good universities and great talent there as
Interesting.
well. So it's
Hmm.
been a pleasure building out the team there and working with people there. So
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah.
And just reflecting back on both the ventures, what are some of the, let's say, learnings you've had, and what are some of the, let's say, key things which you would now probably do differently if you were in the same situation? Whatever top two, three things come to your mind.
uh, let's see. Yeah. So one thing which is sort of a learning, right? So now first
Hmm.
venture, Unscramble, at least one of my uh, focus was on tackling interesting problems, right? So I left IBM
Hmm.
to work on what I thought was
Yeah.
interesting problems,
Right.
which which was a which is not always a optimal thing from
Yeah.
a startup growth point
Business
of view.
point.
Yeah. So in fact, the first few years, while we were building on the natural language SQL, we had to sort of create the market in a sense. Nobody was thinking about natural language,
Mm.
interfaces at all, right? So,
Yeah.
and now it's of course very different. But chatbots had just come out, and most people were struggling to even get chatbots to do very basic things, like in the mid
Correct.
2010s or late 2010s.
Hmm.
So it was. Yeah, so we had to even make the market in a sense, and we thought I think we did a good job in that, but it was a lot of
Hmm.
effort. Right?
Yeah.
Like nobody was looking for a national language solution. It was like we had to
Correct.
show, okay, this is actually possible and can generate this, these benefits.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is still interesting because making the market also has its own.
Yeah.
Means you can shape it to a degree. So we were featured by Gartner several times in many of the reports
Hmm.
and some other awards. Um, but yeah, but looking back, we would have sort of indexed a little bit less on solving something super interesting and and more
Yeah.
on something
Impact
was a more
business
ready market
value.
potentially.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one
And
learning. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
mhm.
Yes.
No, I was just
Yeah. And then on the services side, um, yeah, I think that this is where from a learning point of view, right? And this could be an opportunity as well. So we've been talking to some VCs on the AI services side because doing AI services I mean, these days, I would say, as what's the state of AI today, right? There are
Mhm.
some there are some solutions which are pretty well understood, I would say, like RAG based solutions or certain kinds of
Mhm.
chatbot. and you can build them out. But lots of other solutions which are more exploratory. So lots of, like, as I mentioned, we're about we're working with one customer on a voice bot, which is pretty exploratory. Right? We don't know how well it'll
Yeah.
work. So there is a tricky challenge of how much to explore in these solutions versus, work on things that are more safe.
Right.
Right? And I don't have a solution, but this is where I think some of the AI VCs or AI services, VCs that are open to investing in AI services could play an interesting role. Right? Because it's not necessarily that. So it's beyond. So there are already, for instance, in the voice bot, right? There are lots of models that do voice today. So OpenAI has its own thing,
Yeah.
and there's 11 Labs and Deep Gram, a bunch of both text to speech and speech to text and other models are there, but nobody's put them all together for a voice bot. I
Correct.
think that's at least, right. So there's a lot of exploration still to be done to
And
get
latency becomes a huge problem when you try and put it outside of these systems. So,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, literacy is a huge issue. Understanding interruptions. So when should I stop talking? Understanding
mm,
background noise. So we were doing deployments and summer tests. Sometimes somebody talks on the phone and suddenly they talk to somebody else. Understanding
yeah,
those kind of situations and knowing it's super interesting, but it's a place where it's tricky to, from a services company, to decide how much to invest in
yeah,
exploration versus be more safe.
interesting. And I want to go back to one of the points which you mentioned at the start, right? That you still believe that the right way to unlock intelligence would be a mix of symbolic and deep learning based machine learning.
Yep.
So can you elaborate a bit more on that, and then where does that thinking come from? Are there specific set of problems you have seen where you would need that approach? So would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, LMs are getting good in reasoning, right? And some of the new
Hmm.
OpenAI ones,
Yeah.
they claim to have great reasoning, the O1 and O1 Mini.
Hmm.
Um, and but it's not, but it's kind of a black box still to a degree. You don't know exactly what paths they would take. Right? So,
Hmm.
the place where um, uh, where I believe there'll be we need some mixture of more symbolic and and sort of more statistical or deep learning based approaches is where you have lots of domain data. So let's say in
Hmm.
medicine, right? In
Hmm.
medicine, there's as an example, we know that a drug has, let's say, uh, cannot be taken with certain other drugs, and it's pretty well defined. Lots of ontologies, for instance, which state that a drug will treat these kind of things, has these side effects, and should not be
Yeah.
mixed with these other kind of drugs. And you want to be very precise about those relationships.
Hmm.
Right? It's still open on whether LLMs can be precise about those. That, like, let's say you have a question, right? Like, I have this situation. Like, I'm asking a medical question. Let's say I have a situation. I'm taking this drug. Can I take this
Yeah.
other drug as well?
Hmm.
For those kind of situations, that you want something grounded in strong knowledge about the exact ingredients about the drugs and the dosages and other information, right? You don't want the LM to make even the slightest chance of guessing. So those
Yeah.
those are cases where I think we want a mixture of more symbolic reasoning, which has strong provability, versus along with some deep learning as well, because people may express it in certain different ways, right? And LMs also help in explaining the results nicely. Yeah, but those are situations where the risk of hallucination is high, as and the need to be very accurate should be is very strong, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if there are. Yeah, I mean, there are some techniques I've been seeing where you can mix. You can have an LLM call a tool which could do symbolic reasoning and then return results. But yeah, that's some examples of things where you need that mix, I think.
Yeah. And do you think that there would be, let's say, breakthroughs needed in the symbolic uh, uh, AI side? Because over the last few years, deep learning has just taken the main
Yep.
stage. All the research effort is happening there. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it almost feels like symbolic AI has been left out of this revelation. We don't know
Very true.
what.
Very true. Yeah. No,
So
yeah, you're right. No, I do agree. We need some breakthroughs. So symbolic AI, the key reason why it's not taken off is the effort in constructing the knowledge bases, effort in constructing especially consistent knowledge bases where you can that can reason on in a consistent and sound manner. Right. Um, so where I think some breakthroughs are needed, and maybe LLMs will help in those, is in simplifying the construction of these knowledge bases and helping them evolve and adapt. The so for instance, in the medical space, there's an ontology called SNOMED, SNOMED,
yeah,
as well as UMLS, and I think it takes like armies of people to to maintain them.
correct.
At least at that time when I was looking at them back, right? So uh, it's yeah. So that's one place where we do need some breakthroughs, right? I have seen some research papers on simplifying knowledge-based construction or ontology construction with the help of LLMs. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think there's anything commercially there yet. And I mean, the closest I can think of in the commercial side are some of the graph databases like Neo4j and others
Correct.
have come up with some ways of constructing knowledge graphs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the space is still lots to be done there.
Correct, correct. Interesting. And just taking a cue from there, right? So obviously last few years the domain has grown very quickly and if you were to almost uh, go to sleep when ChatGPT arrived, and if you wake up today, you would probably not recognize what all has happened. But just projecting this into future, what are, let's say, some of the you know trends, or what is your perspective on what lies ahead in the, let's say, next 6, 12 months, maybe a couple of years, depending on whatever you think is the right time frame to project on.
Right. Uh, So I think one technology that especially this year that has taken off is agentic
Yeah,
workflows. Right.
right.
So I think that's going to keep going. I think it offers lots of advantages over single LLM calls or single
Yeah.
chat messages.
Hmm.
Um, and it has a potential to uh, to make it into enterprise settings better, right? So typical chat GPT or other LLMs as well is you're chatting sort of outside the course of your normal day-to-day business activities, but
Hmm.
with the workflows, I can see it being used in with agentic workflows, especially it can be see it being used in far more powerful manners and integrate it into different tools, right? So, like Salesforce has come up with this whole agentic framework, which
Agent.
will help in everything from the marketing and sales and service now or something. So, pretty much most of the big, many of the software tools have either
Yeah.
just a basic search with AI or something deeper like work with agents to help you do your task. So that's going to be a
Okay.
big trend, I think, even the short term, in the next year or 2 years.
Hmm.
More and more incorporation of AI into everyday work.
Hmm.
Where things are fuzzy is I think the boundary between humans and AI. So how much of it's really one thing which as software engineers is how much will AI take over software engineering?
Hmm.
It's an open question, I think. And what is the new skill set for software engineers 3 years down the line?
Right.
Is Yeah, that I don't know how it's going to evolve, but I mean definitely AI makes software developers way more productive. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, that's one that's going to be disrupted in
Mm.
some fashion. Not sure exactly how yet.
Yeah. And on the agentic workflows specifically, right? So how do you see this domain evolving? Because right now, almost everyone is trying to create their own agentic. marketplace to agent stores to you know and at the same time it's at a stage where you're not getting, let's say, very consistent results, right? It's still very
Yeah.
experimentative in that sense. So how do you see this playing out, let's say, in the next 6 to 12 months time frame?
Right. So the places where I see it working better are more researchy topics. So
Mhm.
that's why many of the examples are things like, oh, help me plan a trip, right? Or help
Right.
me explore some topic, or help me understand research in this area, right?
Mhm.
So that's the first part. Where it's okay for to make mistakes, and some human is always in the loop. So the human in the
Mhm.
loop part is going to be important, I think.
Right.
Uh, yes. So yeah, but it is yeah, it's still evolving. I agree. So it's in a place where for research you definitely, I think, is there,
Yeah.
and at some point it's going to hit, maybe, but it might depend on the exact industry. At some point it might hit a threshold where you could allow the agent to take actions automatically, right?
Mhm.
So like I said, my one of the project 1 by 0 is an automatic social media response.
Right.
So
Mm.
where one of the steps in that agentic workflow is making a decision. Does the AI have enough confidence in how to reply to this particular tweet or post or message,
Mhm.
versus when should I get a human in the loop? So that decision point is going to be critical on deciding when you can take action automatically versus when it's going to need to
Right.
ask a human for approval. So that's yeah. So I see possible innovations uh, and more systems where AI and humans can work together in a better fashion. So I think that
Mhm.
part is still missing. I think most agentic workflows focus on the the core graph, right, or the core, the
Right.
defining the agents, but not as much on how and when to get humans involved. So yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Interesting. Uh, just shifting, gears a bit, and given that you have done research, you have more than 30 patents to your name. You have done multiple startups now. Uh, if let's say for people who are now joining the workforce, they're just coming out of their colleges, how should they think about their career, and how should they be navigating this space today? Because it's not as easy probably as it was when we probably graduated. So how would you advise them to think
Yeah.
about their
Yeah, no, it's a tricky question. Like even with my kids, it's like a few years back, I would have, you know, heavily prioritized, say, learning how to code or something, and now I'm not sure
Mhm.
anymore whether
Yeah,
coding as a skill
it's a
is.
difficult one. Correct.
Yeah. It's a uh, yeah. So I think one of the things is so one way to think about it is to uh, get very familiar with some domain, right? So there's one career path you can take. I'm not saying it's only one, but one career
Hmm.
path is, take a certain domain and become an expert in it, right? So
Hmm.
because there's less chance of you being disrupted
Right.
if beyond, say, basic software or other skills, you also are an expert in say insurance or something, right? Uh, and yeah, so that's one direction I would take, right? So uh, I can definitely see a future where generic software engineering is is no
The
longer
mainstream. Yeah.
a thing needed. Software engineering is more a tool that you build code, and but you can easily get something else to, somebody else or an AI to do it.
Hmm.
But domain expertise and understanding different businesses is not going to change. And also, so that's one thing that apart from just plain software development, if there's a domain that you can also start to get expertise in, that'll
Mhm.
be, I think, super useful. Um, and the other thing is keeping track. I think it's super difficult these days to just keep track of all the advancements. Even in the
Mhm.
space, it's I can barely read all the, every day there are like 20 interesting news articles that come
Yeah.
out or papers. But yeah, as much as possible, to just keep track of what's going on, try different frameworks and systems and tools, and just make sure what's out there and how it could improve your own effectiveness. Yeah, that's the advice, and it's super vague, but yeah, but I think it's a part of the fact of the times that the that it's that the future is changing so quickly.
Right, right. No, that is true. And that's why I think, yeah, it's a question which the current generation would probably have top of the mind, and then it's difficult to have a clear answer. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, uh, Usually, typically towards the end of this podcast, we ask a few rapid fire questions to our
Okay.
guests, and the idea is to just know you better as a person, right? So, any particular book which had a huge impact on you and which you would recommend to people?
Oh, maybe slightly controversial, but I
Hmm.
used to love Ayn Rand. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
heard of
Oh,
uh,
wow. Yeah, yeah, of course, the
Fountainhead and
Fountainhead
Atlas
and
Shrugged.
the Atlas Shrugged, yeah.
Yeah, so it was one of uh, the so Ayn Rand had a philosophy of
Correct.
creators, right? The value
Yeah.
creators in society, people with original
Hmm.
thoughts and so on. Then that kind of inspired me as well. One of my pushed me to do a PhD and some other things in my life too. But yeah,
Okay.
that's a book I like.
That's the one. Sure. Okay. If you were not in this field, not in, let's say, AML, what do you think where you would be or what you would be doing?
Uh, as a kid, I loved history. So if if I was not at
Okay.
all in this field, I would have been a historian potentially.
Wow, interesting. And what does your typical weekend look like? How do you unwind?
I like outdoor stuff. So,
Hmm.
I used to run marathons and
Oh,
also go on long bike rides and or
hmm.
swims. And yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, as far as possible, try to do something outdoors. So everything from racket sports. Like these days, I started doing pickleball a lot. I don't know if pickleball is
Oh,
a fad in
yeah,
India, but
it is. It is.
it is okay.
Yeah.
And as well as hiking and active water sports and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Great. No, thanks for sharing those, Anand. And
Yeah.
again, would like to thank you for sharing your perspective and your journey.
Yeah, sure.
Any parting word for the community? Anything you would want to add, which we may not have discussed?
Oh, no, I think the community you've built is spectacular. I mean, I think the articles that I've seen people write and the other the podcasts or the talks that you give, you keep up the great work. And at the very least, I think you have you created lots of training data for AI systems. But
That is true.
it's
Yeah,
a yeah, but I think it's a fascinating time to be in this space. So much
it
has
is.
changed, and all the future is still fuzzy. But if you but
That's the
it's
fun.
no better time. It's a fun, yes.
Yeah, correct. Great. No, thanks a lot, Anand, and thanks
Thanks.
for taking time out for the podcast.
Oh, indeed. Thanks, Kunal. It's a pleasure, and yeah, looking forward to chatting. And people can reach out to me on LinkedIn and others if they want to
Sure.
engage.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. See ya.
There you have it. That's the journey of Anand and his startups. I hope you enjoyed the episode and do let us know any feedback you have on the show. Personally, for me, it was very interesting to see how Anand is actually building services before venturing into the products and testing those services in real time with clients. So, do let me know what was the highlight for you in the episode. Thank you.